What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to another live stream. How are we all doing today? I see a couple of familiar names in the live chat. How are you all? Welcome to the live stream. As usual, I know you can't see anything yet, but please do tell me if you can hear everything okay. Just so that I can kind of quickly diagnose and fix any issues if we do have them. Yeah, so we've got some really interesting price action that we're going to be covering today. We've seen Bitcoin moving by quite a bit. And actually, surprisingly, the stock market is not doing so well. It's doing a little bit better today, and I think that's why we've seen Bitcoin do so well throughout the course of today. However, it's quite clear that there's a big difference with what we're seeing from the S&P 500, from traditional finance, and what we're seeing from Bitcoin itself. So, as usual, ladies and gents, as you're coming in, I want you to smash those likes up, and just let me know where you're watching from today. Where in the world are you, and how are you feeling? You feeling bullish? You feeling bearish? You feeling like we're kind of heading into a bull trap? I know that a lot of people are kind of talking about that right now. We'll be kind of covering those ideas throughout the course of this live stream. And also, maybe you think that actually it's not a bull trap, because we are sitting at 91K. Maybe you think it's not a bull trap and actually we're just back, right? Maybe we're just so back. Maybe Easter happened, we cleansed whatever we needed to cleanse, and we're just back. So let me know what you think about these markets and where you're watching from today, as you do come in today and smash up those likes. Thank you all very much. Shout out to DJ Kickflip. We are now live. Lewis, what's up, Lewis from Miami, Florida? How you doing? We got Jimmy from the UK, a fool in the house. What's up, man? We got Southern Spain, Sergio. Howdy from Oklahoma. What's up, guys? Welcome to the live stream. We got Vietnam in the chat from the beautiful little island of Anglesey, North Wales, UK. Amazing. I haven't been to Wales too much, but I really wish I did. From Oman, what's up, Oman? Shout out to my GCC brothers and sisters. What's up? New lights are sick. I know, right? They're pretty cool. I like them. You know what's cool though? You know what's cooler than that? Maybe I shouldn't tell you. Like, it's the stuff I can do with this setup. It's just mind blowing. Like you, and the viewers can't even tell. It's actually kind of cool. We got Hong Kong in the house. What's going on, Hong Kong? Sandbanks from the UK, Milwaukee. How you guys doing? Welcome to the live stream. Once again, if you haven't already, smash up those likes. Just let me know where you're watching from and how you feel about these markets. I am dealing with a really annoying sinus today. About a week or so ago, I said I'm sick. Turns out I'm not sick. Turns out it's allergies. I've never had allergies in my life. This is horrible. And I'm gonna sort it. We're gonna completely get rid of this whole allergy kind of discussion as well. But until I figure out how to do it, I'm just left with looking like I'm sick. So now you guys know why that's happening throughout this live stream. I'm probably gonna have to repeat that as more people come in. But shout out to Saudi Arabia, Netherlands feeling bullish. We got Lebanon, Florida. What's up, Four Flies? Cheers from a chilling beach in Costa Rica. All right, well, you win. You win, sir. Good job. We got Luxembourg. How you doing? What's up? Let's look at this. Let's look at this Bitcoin chart. So now what we're seeing, we gotta put this in perspective, right? The last time that kind of Bitcoin went up into this 90K range, it was here. And from the low of, what was this low? From the low of about 81.5 all the way up to a high of about 93, that was a 13% move, 14% move, but it only happened inside of a day and a half. Okay, so pretty quick price action. And just as fast as we went up, we came back down. Okay, and that's basically what we saw the time before that. Okay, we had a bigger move. This was a little bit closer to 21, 22%. But again, it only took 2 days. It was a really quick move, and then pretty much just as quickly as we went up, we came back down. Okay, what do I think about OM? Not interested. We can look at it later on. This time, it's different. This time is different because, we came from a lower low. we front ran a really important support level, which is, the low kind of 70K range, because obviously that's where, a lot of people were probably going to be very, very interested in picking some Bitcoin up. So we actually managed to save ourselves from that low and front run it a little bit. And since then, we're up by 23%. Okay, so orders of magnitude larger, to be honest, or an order of magnitude larger, maybe, or nearly, than what we saw before. So I think that's a really big deal. So, to me, what this means, the fact that Bitcoin has gone up by 23% in 2 weeks compared to previously, a smaller percentage move, and it only took 2 days. And on this occasion, an even smaller percentage move, and it only took a day and a half. The fact that this one happened slowly makes it so much more likely and realistic that it's actually going to stick. Okay, it makes it so much more likely and realistic that this price action is legitimate, and that we're going to keep it, and that we're going to be able to continue going higher. That's just Bitcoin in and of itself. Now, we cannot have this discussion without looking at traditional finance as well, which we'll do. But before we get there, another victory lap for those of you watching this channel regularly. Bitcoin's dominance has set yet another high in these recent days, and now is peaking at about 64.6. For some reason, I saw this at 64.8, but I think maybe I was just hallucinating, whatever. But, we are now officially also higher than the highest high that we established in early February, which continues to mark the relative decline of all of these altcoins against Bitcoin. Now, today, there's a little bit of kind of excitement in the altcoin space. And, we've seen, for example, here's Solana BTC picking up a little bit of value against Bitcoin, right? So we've been seeing a little bit of that today. But overall, if we just zoom this thing out a little bit, you've had a very, very bad time if you've been positioned in alts for the most part, all right? Exceptions apply, but as usual, as you'll know very well from watching this YouTube channel, you're not smart if you point them out, okay? Exceptions do not make you, just observing them and pointing them out doesn't make you smart. It's actually a litmus test for how stupid you are if you think you get points for it. That's actually, I think, really, really important. If you appreciate that kind of sentiment, then do me a favor and smash up those likes. I am just burning through these tissues right now. Sammy is one of the best market analysts in the world. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate that. I think I'm pretty good. I'm realistic, right? That's ultimately what this is. I'm realistic about what I'm doing. And as a result of being realistic, I get to keep it, pretty calm, pretty stable, pretty, tension-free, hassle-free. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, it's waiting, right? I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? It's just waiting. The more you wait, and the more you kind of see stuff coming, then, the more you're correct, the more money you make. So, yeah, you guys mentioning some really, really cool stuff. You called this pump. Thank you very much. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this was pretty obvious. And I think, it came down to this support zone that we were talking about in the previous video. But, there was this short that I was telling you guys about as well, right? I was saying, a lot of people are probably going to be looking to take on some shorts up in this price range. And, but I did tell you that I wouldn't be doing that. I think that, even though it kind of looked good and it looked like, your kind of typical setup, we shouldn't be so, dare I say, arrogant as to think that these kind of, easy setups will always work. I think there's always kind of a little bit of nuance that kind of needs to be explored with those ideas. And actually, what happens with a lot of traders is they do so badly for so long, and then they kind of see obvious trades and they're like, I'm just going to take it, no questions asked, right? And that also doesn't work, that's actually what I would call kind of trading from a place of frustration, and God knows I've done a lot of that. I've done that a lot in my 8+ years of kind of being a trader, but it ain't good, all right? And if it's you, and if you do that, then you got to be really, really conscious of it, because that can really kind of screw you over. Welcome to the live stream, those of you that are just tuning in. If you have just tuned in, do me a favor and smash up those likes. The algorithm's been dirty to us lately, ladies and gents. The algorithm has been dirty. I need a little bit of your help, so if you can, smash them up. I really do appreciate it. Jimmy is saying, if it's mostly institutional buying, do you think it'll trickle down into alts this time around? I think whether or not it trickles down into alts is a different discussion to just institutions. But I mean, overall, yeah, I think, kind of anything, regardless of who's buying, will trickle down into alts. But it is a Bitcoin dominance discussion, and I already got a question about that in the live chat, which I haven't actually answered yet, about where I think this could top out. That's a bigger discussion, so I'm just going to kind of, tease you with that and not cover this yet, because I do want to cover some more raw Bitcoin price action before we get to that. If you are looking forward to it, once again, do me a favor and smash up those likes. And like I said, if you haven't already, tell me where you're watching from and how you feel about these markets. That is absolutely sick. But just take a look at this candle right here, ladies and gents. It's very much, you know, look at this. These are the lines that I had already drawn, and this was kind of my bear scenario, and I don't think this is going to happen, so we'll remove those. But that's more or less kind of what we were forecasting right here. And I mean, pretty perfect, you know, because we also just know that this stuff is probably going to happen quickly, right? Like if you get the breakout, the subsequent moves are probably going to happen pretty quickly. You got to bear in mind this range here. I think people really lose perspectives on these things. This range did last about 2 weeks, right? I mean, if we kind of measure it from, you know, when we entered this range to kind of when we exited, that's, okay, it's a little bit less than 2 weeks. It's about 10 days, but it's a long time, right? It's a long time to kind of just be, it's actually 11 because I think it doesn't count the first candle. You know, and so to me, that makes it, you know, viable that, you know, if we start to kind of break out of it, you are going to have to expect, you know, some slightly more kind of extreme price action to follow after that. So I think that that's something that, you know, we should just kind of continue to, you know, keep an eye out for as things do continue to go on in this market here. So that's Bitcoin right here. Now, if we do take a look at what Bitcoin has been able to do, like I said, you know, it's just melted through resistance here at 88. Now, I don't think that's a problem. I think that actually, you know, this is a really nice backtest zone. So if Bitcoin does do us the pleasure of kind of retracing a little bit, then there are going to be some really obvious kind of, you know, entries around this range, I think, for bulls. Not necessarily, you know, I'm not saying that these are great trade ideas, but I think that definitely people are going to be very interested in them. And that's obviously always going to be exciting. Those of you that are looking for a home to trade, or maybe a new home to trade with some amazing bonuses, you've got some pretty cool links in the description to 3 phenomenal exchanges. Bybit remains pretty much, you know, obviously the best in the game, but OKX, you know, basically neck and neck with Bybit. I don't think that they kind of I don't think that people kind of know enough about them, but they've been around for a long time. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they've literally never been hacked, which, you know, is a pretty big deal. It's got a Web3 wallet. They also sponsor a Formula 1 team. I think Bybit doesn't sponsor Red Bull anymore. I'm pretty sure they don't. Understandably, it was probably extremely expensive. But McLaren's cool, and the exchange is, you know, it's solid. It's what you're used to. You get great liquidity, and it is a very trusted exchange in the space. I think one of the best things that, you know, probably many of you guys or some of you guys watching will appreciate are the off-ramp capabilities. You can, if you live in the UAE, for example, you can, you know, just directly withdraw into your bank account from an exchange, which, you know, to my knowledge, it's kind of the first one that ever allowed something like that. You know, like, it's so easy. So definitely check them out if you are interested. They're linked with that description down below. You'll hear more about them later on. And of course, if you are enjoying this, do me a favor and kind of smash those likes up real quick. Now, always bear in mind that you know, you should only be using these exchanges if you're allowed to, if they're allowed in your region, and if you are blocked from using them, then obviously don't break your country's local laws and regulations. But again, bringing it back to Bitcoin here, like I said, you know, I think this would kind of be a little bit of a long setup for Bitcoin. It would probably, I think it would be really interesting across the whole market, not just for Bitcoin. Also, altcoins will probably do quite well. So, you know, that's something that I would like to see at this stage. You know, if I can kind of say that the resistance level sat at about 88.3, then, you know, I can still draw, you know, a 3.6% kind of measured move up, which is a lot, you know, like, that's a really nice margin to be clearing resistance by. And, you know, if we're able to kind of hold on here for a little bit, you know, maybe we don't have to come down now. We can go sideways and kind of do this, right? Or we can just continue going higher. But in any case, this is now going to be a zone of interest for me, you know, in this market to, you know, again, I might not take a long on it necessarily. I don't have to trade everything that I see, but I certainly will be watching it, because I think that, you know, it is an obvious level that, you know, some buys will probably start kind of coming into the market. Now, we are stuck in another resistance level, and this is a resistance level that we were expecting for quite some time. this resistance level stretches between 90,500 and 92K. Recently, I told you that I think we're going to melt through this one too. And, we definitely could be doing that, right? I mean, the first time when we hit this candle, we did still close a daily candle. So if we do the same thing now, that still means tomorrow is a big day of up for Bitcoin through this price range, through this resistance range. If we zoom in even more, you can really see what it looks like, right? Like if you're really kind of short-term analyzing this stuff, you might kind of start, over analyzing and yeah, just kind of seeing things that aren't there. But if you're keeping it pretty chill, like we like to do right here on this YouTube channel, then, quite frankly, to me, this was just, the price slowing down as we approach the resistance level. And, the mechanics behind this, I think, are pretty obvious. If you think about them, you will always kind of have a pretty solid idea of what's going on in the market and where we might be going. And put simply, as we approach resistance levels, believe it or not, there are going to be sellers, okay? And if people are selling, and as a result, because everybody knows it's resistance, right? You're going to get a little bit less buying action. It's just super normal to see this kind of price action where, basically things just slow down, okay? Things don't really change, they just slow down. And then when you're out of it, you can get another kind of nice pump, and now we're in the next resistance range. So we're really not getting any surprises here on the shorter term time frames. This stuff was really obvious, and those of you that have been subscribed to this YouTube channel will have seen that with quite a beautiful degree of accuracy there. So that's pretty cool as far as this resistance level goes. Now, like I said, above this range, there's, again, a lot that Bitcoin can do. If Bitcoin can kind of swing above this high that it just punched in today, which means getting above 92, then one of the big things that's going to happen is we're going to start kind of, reclaiming this high right here. And the reason I think that's a big deal is it's a structure question, right? If we kind of take this to a chart which is a little bit simpler, I will show you that on, we'll take the Bybit chart. It's pretty clear that, this was our previous high for the market. And it's kind of a macro high too, right? If you look at this on the 4-hour, it's still pretty clear. If you look at it on the daily, it's still a very important level for Bitcoin. So, reclaiming it basically means that, we're no longer, and this can still go south for us, but if we reclaim it, it means that we're no longer setting a series of lower highs, okay? And that's really, really important, okay? So reclaiming this one would be a really, really big deal, and that only requires us to get up to about 93. So that's literally like a 2% move away from where we are right now. So really not a lot. And it would be quite easy for Bitcoin to get there. I think it would be a little bit of a stock market question. And actually, on that note, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and take a look at the stock market, because as I've always been saying, Bitcoin is going to be dependent on it. We've been seeing a little bit of a kind of decoupling narrative, which I think is probably worth kind of, talking about just a little bit. I was convinced to take care of that, and I just think I look horrible. So anyway, keep it the full face cam on anyway. What I really will say about, and by the way, I mean, just really, really good performance from Bitcoin, compared to the S&P 500. We've got to give it credit. But what I will say about this kind of decoupling argument is, we've been seeing evidence for it. We've been seeing evidence that Bitcoin is decoupling for a little bit. But then, then Bitcoin kind of succumbs to that pressure, and almost like a vacuum, it gets pulled, back to decency, dare I say, or just whatever you want to call it. But, some sort of kind of correlation with traditional finance. That's what we've seen happening a lot, where even if Bitcoin does decouple for a little bit, it's quite transient, it's quite temporary, and the market just kind of carries on. And it equalizes later on. Now, what's worth noting before we look at the data is we're getting more of those decoupling events over the years. And yet it's still not statistically significant enough for me to feel like we actually have decoupled, even at this stage. I need to see a lot more. I need to see it sustained. And most importantly, I need to see that equilibrium not being returned back to. Okay, a lot of the time we return back to that equilibrium. We return back to that correlation. I need to see that we're not doing that. And if we do that, then I can start saying, okay, we've got a decoupling situation. Right now, it's totally conceivable, given the relatively small market cap of crypto compared to traditional finance. It's actually pretty easy to believe that it could just be other stuff, right? The Trump family fund, launching ETFs, which has kind of been in the news recently, stuff like that. So, So EMS mentioned the same thing, saying, you're right, Sammy, the 2025 BlackRock paper on Bitcoin said the same, that it sometimes decouples. Absolutely. And to me, I count these more as fluctuations. I count these more as, I don't even like using the word anomaly because it kind of sounds like a big deal. It's not a big deal what we're doing with Bitcoin. And for me, I think one of the biggest things that I really try and do in my work is just maintain a realistic perspective of everything that I see. That's really hard to do when you're on Twitter. That's really hard to do when you're in your friends' group chats. That's really hard to do when you're on Telegram and Discord. But if you're kind of solo like me and you don't collaborate with people, maybe you've got a team like I do, but nothing more, and you don't talk about markets outside of that very tight-knit circle or outside of just yourself, then it actually gets a lot easier to maintain a realistic perspective on things. In fact, one of the things that you'll see if you do this, and most of you won't do this because you're scared, but if you do, one of the things that you'll see is that over time, you'll get a bit of stimuli, right? It could be Trump, it could be something else, whatever. And it will be kind of a big deal. The market will perceive it as a big deal. People will perceive it as a big deal, but you won't. And then you'll see how people behave about these things later on, right? You'll open Twitter, or then you'll ask your friends what they think, right? Whatever the deal may be. And you'll start seeing that actually the reaction is very severe. And you'll realize that that's kind of an echo, that's the result of an echo chamber. And if you're inside of the echo chamber, you will get caught in it and you will regurgitate what it says. But if you're outside of it, you won't even know that these narratives are being spun. And that will make you a lot more neutral. And that will take you to a place closer to where we are on this YouTube channel, where no matter what's happening, we're retaining a very realistic perspective of things so that, number one, nothing really takes us by surprise, but that number two, and I'd say this is actually the most important thing that I can say on the entire live stream, potentially, maybe even on the entire YouTube channel, is that you're going to have a very stable, calm, neutral response to everything, okay? You're just going to be able to detach by quite a bit. Now, like I said, most people are not going to do it because they're scared, and you're probably one of them. So please be mindful of that. This doesn't mean that you have to go all the way and become a monk, but it certainly means that if you step back and you look at the kind of informational sources you're using and you ask yourself, how useful has this been? Like, how many dollars has it actually put in my fucking pocket? Okay, if you ask questions like that, you will end up cutting everything out. You will end up cutting everything out. I encourage you to try it. Just pause the video. You might even cut out this YouTube channel. You might. And that's totally fine because it's not about, kind of who you're watching or whatever. We tend to kind of procrastinate with these ideas. But ultimately, if you've got a realistic sense of what's going on in the market, you will be able to be objective. And as a result, you will also be able to become subjective when you decide to take a trade. So it's a really important note and definitely an important one. And if you do appreciate that, then do me a favor and smash up those likes. We're up to about 250 viewers. Let's see if we can get this thing up to, let's see if we can get this thing up to like 100 likes, 150. That should be easy. That should be very, very easy. So smash them up if you are enjoying this stream so far. But like I said, we'll take a look at the stock market now just for a little bit. Obviously, I was not expecting that yesterday's candle would kind of, turn down like this, but it did turn out to be a little bit of a, recovery yesterday. Today, obviously, we're seeing a little bit more kind of upward price action, which is definitely interesting. It's worth noting that while the S&P 500 is struggling to even reclaim this support resistance range, whatever you want to call it, Bitcoin is still more or less trading at its highs for the day, for the week, for the month even. So, I think that we're still seeing a clear mismatch here in terms of strength on Bitcoin versus strength in traditional finance. So, again, like I said, I don't think that this is a decoupling situation. To me, that means that either the S&P 500 catches up or Bitcoin is just high on something that it cannot sustain and it's going to end up coming down. I don't know which is more likely. I'm leaning toward the traditional finance market coming up because I'm just bullish in general, and I have been bullish in general for some time. And believe it or not, a little 30% shakeout is not going to scare me out of this kind of Bitcoin perspective. I'm just more realistic than that. I understand that Bitcoin can and has suffered many, many times before quite large pullbacks inside of bull markets. And I understand that that's actually totally normal and actually very, very healthy. Take a look at this, by the way, just to see the correlation, because we're live right now. S&P moves up by a little bit, Bitcoin's up by a little bit. Just take a look at these numbers right here. If you see this thing dumping, you're going to see Bitcoin losing 90.9. If you see it going up, you're going to see Bitcoin rising above 91K. Just keep an eye on this. It's really, really interesting to see, just how these markets are not really traded, like for the most part, by real humans. It's mainly just kind of bots that keep everything in line with everything else. That's actually what happens most of the time, and you can observe that happening right here as we're live as well. The humans really only come in when things are moving, right? When we're kind of like going through something or doing something. But up until that point, a lot of it is bots. A lot of it is just bots that recognize, oh, the S&P is up, let's buy a little bit of Bitcoin kind of thing. And obviously, there's no disagreement there, because that correlation is important for the safety and reliability of these markets. I think one thing that's worth taking into account as well, just while we're live here, is, a lot of the bigger traders, a lot of the bigger kind of trading desks, they've got quite systemized trading. And they're applying that systemized trading to every market that they're in. But the problem is that they're good at it. And, if you're good at it, what's going to start happening is you're going to run out of liquidity in the market to keep doing it, because your account balance has gotten so big. When you get to that point, you got to look into market B, and then market C, and then market D, and so on. Crypto is a new one, and crypto is one that has now been tamed by those same people. And that's, again, why we're seeing such similar kind of behavior in crypto. Even when we start talking about things like decoupling, we're still moving at the mercy of the S&P 500. It decouples for a little bit, and now it's back. And you can see Bitcoin sitting at the same price level that the S&P 500 is struggling at. I mean, obviously Bitcoin's a lot higher, but if the S&P breaks, we're probably going to see Bitcoin moving up. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, in terms of S&P 500 analysis, we've got to reclaim this level. It sits at about 52.80. If the S&P 500 can reclaim this level, then it's probably upward from here toward 5,400 and beyond. I think that it will be able to break these resistance levels if it manages to recover above this level, because it's going to be carrying a little bit of momentum and a little bit of excitement behind it. And to me, that would be enough to take us above these highs, and that would more or less kind of put this bull market back on, in my eyes, right? I mean, that does represent, first of all, a rise of more than 13% from the absolute lows. So that in and of itself is a big deal for the S&P 500. But I mean, it's like the atmosphere, right? The higher you go, the more it kind of thins out. There isn't an abundance of resistance for the S&P 500 above these levels, or really anywhere on this chart at all. And so I think that, just kind of reclaiming these levels a little bit is going to be what really sets these markets onto a better place. Now, the other big thing that I think is really important to kind of cover with you guys in this live stream, which I've actually already spoken about. You guys can actually go ahead and watch my short on this with the link in the description. Let me find where this is. It's right here. If you go and take a look at the shorts, it's the raw truth of how Bitcoin pumps or dumps. I'm talking essentially about how it's not actually kind of sentiment or people that move these markets, but rather the other way around. Because the former, it implies that if people feel good, then they buy. But it's actually the other way around. It's that if the price moves up, it entices people to buy, and then they feel good. We feel good based on hope a lot more than we feel good based on profits, primarily because we're not going to get that many profits in these markets, but we're going to get many, 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 many more instances of feeling hopeful. And so as gamblers, which is how many people treat these markets, you will naturally end up banking on your hope, and not actually making much money at all. So, basically, in other words, what that means is the markets will move, and that will influence the kind of investor appetite that we have in the game. And based on that, obviously, people will take action. So, like I said, it's really, and in that sense, I think it's really useful to kind of view these markets as, you got a couple of different classes of people, but the main classes are the classes that make stuff happen. So we're talking about people like Trump, we're talking about institutions like BlackRock, and then we've got the class of people that react to it. And here we have the rest of us, including you and I. We're not the people that make stuff happen, especially not on scales like this. And so, it's really important to kind of have that understanding, because if you don't have that understanding, then, you're always stuck expecting the egg to come before the chicken. And that's going to be, a pretty annoying place for you to live in, basically, so we definitely want to avoid that where possible. So, like I said, I think it could definitely recover. I just, I don't have enough basis to feel super confident in that, but, I like the way that Bitcoin is going despite that. Here's Bitcoin at 9,100, and actually, this is not what I said. I said that Bitcoin will pass 91K if the S&P moves up, but that actually hasn't happened. So we're just kind of clearly consolidating right here. Just, getting used to this price range, feeling it out, to kind of see where this thing might go. So really realistic, dare I say, like borderline boring perspectives here on these markets that I'm kind of, covering with you all today. But if you do appreciate it and if you think it's realistic, do me a favor and smash those likes up. Like I said, the algorithm's been dirty to us lately. So if you can help out, that would be absolutely amazing. And bringing it back to Bitcoin, just to kind of analyze what might happen, we've covered these ideas of kind of macro highs being a really big deal. If Bitcoin gets above 93, then, we're kind of no longer setting macro high, lower highs. But it's not the most important high to me. I think a much more important high is going to be this one at 95. And by that measure, we do still have a further kind of $4,000 and a bit that we're going to have to rise up by in order to kind of meet this level and then get above it. So that's going to be something that we'll continue to watch out for right here on this YouTube channel with videos and live streams. And if for some reason, I just can't, because, we can't spin out unlimited videos or live streams in a day, then this free Telegram channel will give you much more free analysis. And in fact, we've been uploading exclusive stuff to it, including recently. There's been exclusive analysis on there that you guys on YouTube did not see. And it's in the form of videos. It's just like this, full-on analysis videos that you guys did not see. So check this out if you want to get that stuff for free, which is really, really cool. And you can reach out on this link if you're interested in our exclusive one-to-one program. It's an incredible program. We've had incredible results out of it. Definitely worth reaching out for some details if you're interested. But it is expensive and it is very, very serious. If you're not ready for that or it doesn't sound good to you, then that's totally fine. But this won't be for you. So yeah, really, really cool stuff. Check them out if you are interested. But yeah, on this subject of kind of macro lower highs, we've got this 95K region for Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin can get above it, this would be a kind of macro lower high that really counts for a lot if Bitcoin can break it, because it, really resulted in quite a vicious sell-off. I mean, from this level, the immediate sell-off was, it took about a day and it fell down by 14%, which is a big deal. But down to the low, it was more like a 20% drop, which in and of itself is kind of large, especially when you consider that the total drop that we've seen in this market was 32%. So really, a lot of it happened right here, which, I think is quite important. This was a $20,000 price drop for Bitcoin here. Compared to from the all-time high, it was a 35K price drop. So, we this high looks very, very dramatic, but actually I would argue this one is like borderline more important, purely because of, just how much of a sell-off it resulted in. You know what I mean? It really prevented the bulls from doing something, amazing there. So, reclaiming it is a nice big sign that actually we're making a lot of progress. Now, in terms of reclaiming it, it's going to be a challenge, right? Kind of getting above this level is fine. I don't think it should be too much of a challenge, and it's more or less just an empty gap. I can't speak. It's more or less an empty gap between this level at about 91 and the bottom of this box at about kind of 95, 96. As we can see throughout Bitcoin's entire price history in this range, it really just kind of, moves pretty quickly. We can draw a couple of lines to illustrate that because I think it's always quite useful. And I'll go ahead and make these what color really stands out? Probably red, right? I think that was probably the right idea. And if we just kind of keep on trying to draw these lines, what we're going to see is, for the most part, there are exceptions which I'm going to ignore, but for the most part, on the way up and on the way down and on the way back up, just as you can see from here, we're basically moving throughout the entire price range, which is, this spans like a solid kind of 4%, and we're doing it quickly. We're not really messing about when we do this. We're all the way up and all the way down, and it almost always happens as quickly as it happened on the way down. You'll move up as quickly on the way up. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think you get me. And there's so much evidence of this. Look at how many examples of this actually happened. This is what I would call a really very, very nice fertile trading range. There's a lot that you can do in this range. But obviously the problem is, you do get these wicks and they can be what really kind of screw you over, like here, right? Like you could have had that expectation over here and you would have gotten paid for it. But on this one, you would have just been entering along, to just get stopped out straight away. So, this is just the risk of doing business in these markets. That's not surprising or bad or negative in any way. It just is what it is. If you're aware of it, then you can be a shark and kind of make some money off it. And if you're not aware of it, then you'll just be handing liquidity over to somebody else who's better than you. So we gotta be really, really careful of that. It's totally fine to lose a little bit of money every now and then, or to even lose money regularly. There's no point kind of making conclusions on if it's good or bad, because it's really about your strategy. But the bottom line is, if you can't even see that stuff coming, then you really are in trouble. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to be a degenerate with you guys here, and we're going to go ahead and just look at this on the minute time frame. First of all, just to kind of digest what this chart is doing, this is the entire move. It looks pretty healthy, pretty good. And then here is the Bitcoin top right here at about 91.6 so far. We are inching up, trying to break that high right now, so we'll see how that works. And S&P stays where it is. So if the S&P does end up kind of getting a nice big move from here, that's probably going to be what gives Bitcoin the juice to move up. But we are in, like I said, a little bit of that kind of weird decouple situation right now. So who knows? It could just kind of go up on its own. But we're going to keep this planted right here on the right-hand side of the screen, so you can kind of keep seeing what's going on like a degenerate, watching the minute time frame. We're just going to do that for a little bit just because it's entertaining. Pardon me, one sec. I might sneeze. Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning of this stream. I told you guys I was sick like a week ago. Turns out I'm not. Turns out it's allergies. I don't really believe in allergies. I've never had allergies in my whole life, but apparently I have allergies now. So I don't know. I'm gonna take care of this, but that's why I'm being like that. And I'm fine. Like physically, I'm fine. I've been going to the gym and cardio and everything, but yeah, just I don't know. But here we are watching this on the minute time frame here. We'll keep an eye on this and see how this continues to behave for Bitcoin. But like I said, pretty empty range for Bitcoin, right? It shouldn't be too hard once Bitcoin can kind of get above this high right here, which is also this high right here, more or less. Actually it's a little bit higher. It's more like up here. But if Bitcoin can get above it, then we're pretty solid, right? Like we're kind of good to go. I don't think there's going to be much kind of stopping Bitcoin from going up. Of course, a little bit of consolidation is always healthy. It's always welcome. It would help the market kind of hold on to its gains. But we're also coming out of this was a multi-month kind of shitstorm. Really, this was nearly multi-month. This was 56 days of just being in a shit place. And not really doing anything. And so, yeah, you can expect volatility to return back a little bit quicker. And again, if we just kind of keep it locked to this price range and understand what Bitcoin can do here, it could be a really quick rise back up to this 96K range. And that is where Bitcoin topped out. But again, on the idea of Bitcoin reclaiming this high, there's a lot of resistance here, right? And to me, it's not good enough if Bitcoin just gets up to like 97. It's not high enough above that high yet, right? Like that could totally still come back down and it would just look more like a double top. So, I need to see it cleared, with a little bit of margin, with a little bit of headroom, right? And, your 1% level is going to be sitting at about kind of 96K, but your 3% level, which I really like, actually sits above the box entirely at about 98. So, That's actually the level that I'm more interested in to kind of tell me that, we're kind of done with this high. It's a really important high. It's a dangerous high. It's borderline scary because of how difficult it's going to be potentially to get above it. But all of that means that if Bitcoin can get above it, then, we're basically, locked in for new all-time highs at that point, right? It's going to be, I think, quite hard for the bears to seize control of the market again if Bitcoin can convincingly get above this high. Now, if it doesn't convincingly get above this high, or if it gets rejected somewhere in this box, then, the bears are very much still in charge. And so we've got to keep that in mind. Here's Bitcoin just dumping just a little bit here, not really, feeling that price range just yet. But, as we know very, very well, this is a market where, the more you test these levels, the weaker they're going to become. And then, you have a higher chance of kind of breaking them the subsequent time that you come back up. So if Bitcoin kind of fully retraces and does this, then I'm going to be expecting it to break out a little bit more. And if it does it again, then, that probability just kind of keeps on going up. Which is, really useful, I think, to be able to keep in mind right here in these markets. So, this is an important price range for Bitcoin, but with some pretty heavy resistance above it. Is it a bull trap, or did we go past the key level? You can form a bull trap anywhere, right? We could be in a bull trap right now. More likely, it ends up being a bull trap if we kind of top out over here. That's kind of the way that I see it. A bull trap is really anything that kind of gets bulls in, that traps them in longs that they don't want to be in, and then the price kind of reverses. So, you can make a case for a bull trap happening here just as much as you can make a case for it happening here or even above. It doesn't really matter. But for me, I just think that, the chance that we get, a bigger kind of macro rejection is a lot higher in this price range. And, we can just really, it's so easy to see why, based on all of the kind of consolidation and reversals that, we've seen in this price range here. So breaking this, I think, is going to be a really, really big deal for Bitcoin if it is able to do that. But of course, we have to discuss the downside. I know it's not fun. I know it's not, exciting at a time like this, but that also is what makes it easy to get carried away. We are in a resistance zone, right? And ultimately, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. If the S&P 500 is what ends up dumping, then it might still take Bitcoin out of this range, especially if the S&P starts breaking, significant important levels. Then, it's really over for Bitcoin potentially. And so if we take this onto the 4-hour and kind of talk about what that might look like, it's like I said earlier in the stream. First of all, you've got a really nice support level down here, so I won't even be too worried. But if we do lose that level, then we're kind of back in this sideways range, which, I don't really want to see us returning to. It's not a nice place to be, and, we haven't really traded here ever in history other than, the candles that you see on screen right now. This is like the only price history Bitcoin has ever had here, which makes it a little bit harder to analyze, a little bit harder to have confidence in, levels. But still, we can have that confidence. We discussed this long opportunity on this YouTube channel just in like the second most recent video, and just look at how well that ended up playing out, right? So you can still definitely do stuff. But again, if you're coming back down, and especially if you're losing this support level now, I wouldn't really expect these interim support levels to be in play, and I would probably be looking at the low 80s. But again, at that point, what we're doing is we're sweeping above so many highs and then just falling back down. To me, it just kind of indicates that we would have to return back into the 60s, and it would probably be pretty bad. So, it's good news in that, we're kind of finally doing something, but it's actually really bad news if this thing ends up turning again, in my opinion, because to sweep highs like this and then still mess it up and come back down, you are really, going to struggle to give bulls a reason to keep on buying. Because, at that point, you could kind of read between the lines and assess that, Bitcoin might come down to significantly lower price levels. So do I think that the dollar will drop down to 20 or 21 from here? That sounds like a ridiculously low level. I don't think so. And I'm also not kind of the best at analyzing the dollar. So, I don't want to try and claim to be an expert really in anything ever, but, especially for the dollar, it's pretty hard to read. I don't get it. I know that Macron, has been kind of calling for the euro to kind of take over, against the dollar. But as we know, the only thing being taken over when Macron is in the picture is his husband, taking over him, and there's a lot of interesting stuff happening around there. So we're not really interested in what Mr. French President or Prime Minister or whatever has to say. Obviously, I don't know if he actually has a husband. There's just rumors, and I'm not saying that his wife is a man, but I don't know. Things are a bit weird. So I just don't think that this is anything to really read into. It's just the dollar, and it doesn't seem to be having an impact on the market right now, right? I mean, if the dollar is moving down, we would expect the S&P to move up, right? We would expect Bitcoin to move up, and okay, Bitcoin's moving up, but I'm not seeing enough there to tell me that kind of inverse correlation is present right now. So, I just chalk it up to being another kind of market dynamic that, I don't know. I don't want to say it doesn't make sense, but, it definitely isn't making an abundance of sense, I guess. And it also, more importantly than all of that, it doesn't seem to be having any real bearing on the market. So, I'm just not really, too attached to what goes on with the dollar. Let's get this thing up to 100 likes, ladies and gents. We're so close. Smash them up if you are enjoying this so far. But that's the dollar. Back to the S&P. We've covered this pretty well. It's kind of in the middle of a recovery. It's a very political thing, so we're just gonna have to see what goes on with Trump in the Oval Office moving forward. Bitcoin's dominance, I mentioned kind of covering this earlier on in the stream, and as far as a high goes, I think it would be hard for Bitcoin to get above 70% dominance in this market. That still means that your altcoin positions get absolutely wiped. It would be really, really bad for most altcoins if Bitcoin did end up kind of getting up there. But the reason I don't see it getting higher than that is, overall, we're in a pretty clear trend where, the dominance has kind of just moved down forever. And I don't really think that that's going to be changing. It's kind of hard to see, but, if let's just zoom in because I want to show you guys this. If you just kind of look at, what happened back here, we already had, a pretty clear kind of situation where dominance was always kind of trending down, right? We're on the weekly time frame here, so we got to keep in mind that this is a super long-term view at things, and, we're looking at, 99% here and then just lower highs, right? Your high over here is 99.5 coming down from 99.9. And then it's 99.3, and then it's 98.6, and then it's 97.5, and then you come down to 96.2, and all of a sudden it's 2017, and the market's completely different, right? So throughout Bitcoin's entire life history, it's been losing dominance, and that's kind of, I think that's going to continue to happen. It didn't happen in the last bull market, did it? We didn't actually come down to, as low levels, but I just don't see it happening any other way. It's like I said earlier on in the live stream, if you have, if you visualize what the largest traders and the largest trading desks look like, they've got very systemized trades where they're just kind of optimizing and refining as time goes on. But what it means is that they kind of run out of liquidity to continue playing in each market that they're in, so they got to move on to the next one. And that's what we're seeing, with Bitcoin. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see in the altcoin market. So I do think that we're going to, overall, I think we're going to continue to see Bitcoin's dominance kind of, mellow out and drop lower. But, and so as a result, I don't think we're sweeping these highs. We kind of never really have swept highs on Bitcoin's dominance. And so I don't think we're going above 70, but 70 is in reach now. So, that's just crazy. That is just absolutely crazy. But, the good news is if you do start to kind of reach these kind of high levels, now you've got maximum reward in altcoins, and it's going to get really, really interesting, right? On this YouTube channel, we've been looking at Ethereum quite a bit. I've been telling you that I want to buy it, but I can't buy it because I think it's going to keep going down. And now it's in my final buy range. It's in my final buy zone. It's a buy zone that I just did not expect at all that Ethereum can kind of get back down to. But here we are. This is what's ended up happening. And I don't see Ethereum. I don't know. Like, it could, maybe with Wix, but like, what a crazy thing it would be, if Ethereum ended up kind of falling out of this range, which means basically anywhere below 0.016 BTC per token. Right now it's sitting at 0.185 BTC per token. So we're pretty close to, like, you know, I don't know, like what would I even call this? Like, yeah, just I don't know, inverted price discovery or something. Like Ethereum's never really kind of hung out over here, and it made pretty quick work of kind of getting to a pretty good kind of Bitcoin valuation after it was created. So yeah, just a crazy situation in the market, you know, and it really represents a lot, you know, because Ethereum is the biggest after Bitcoin. Maybe not now. I'm pretty sure it still is, but you know, it's also just the most important after Bitcoin, and it's just not looking good. So, you know, let's take a look at this real quick in terms of market cap. Ethereum obviously still number 2 with a market cap of $200 billion, but, you know, Tether itself not too far behind, and neither is XRP. If XRP doubles from here, it's already, you know, this is assuming Ethereum stays where it is, this is already going to be, you know, number 2. Now, there's a lot of hate and there's a lot of shocking statistics about Ethereum. That doesn't scare me. It's like I said, you know, you don't want to be plugged into this sentiment. It's not good for you. And you know, it's like this actually right here. I've never actually seen this before because I don't use CoinMarketCap that much anymore. But you know, it's like this right here. You've got, you know, basically maximum attention on Bitcoin right now, minimal attention on all altcoins right now overall. But that actually makes them, you know, good buys, right? And I think that a lot of people who are kind of more shark-like traders are probably going to be, you know, quite interested in buying these coins, you know, at these kind of price levels. And I think that that's actually, you know, probably the smartest thing that, you know, people could be doing right now if they're interested in longer term investing. I mean, this could go completely wrong, obviously, you know, but, you know, like I said, I've been doing this for over 8 years, and I don't think that any of these coins, the big ones, are going to die. And if I don't think that they're going to die, and I can see, you know, quite abysmally low levels, then, you know, it must just be, you know, buying opportunities. That's kind of what it becomes. So, you know, like I said, there's a lot right now that people dislike about Ethereum. It's a very hated coin. I've been doing this for a long time, ladies and gents. When you have a very hated coin like this, that is in and of itself probably the best opportunity you're going to get to buy it. So could this time be different? Of course it could be different, but you know, it would also, you know, really be a little bit surprising. We got Crypto Kid in the chat. What's going on, man? How you doing? It's been a while. Bullish on Ethereum. Me too, bro. You know, and Crypto Kid gets it. This guy's a fucking genius. He's like, how old are you, bro? Like 17 now? He's basically like, if you guys have been watching me on this YouTube channel for a long time, FA is who I used to be on this YouTube channel years and years ago. And he's so much better than I was as well. And he gets it, you know, like FA's the kind of guy, like if he's talking, you just shut up and listen. He's going to say something important, something useful that will make you money. And even he is bullish on Ethereum, you know, and it's no surprise, you know, that's what I would expect after somebody who's 17 but's got 20 years of trading experience. So, you know, I think that Ethereum continues to kind of look good from a lot of different perspectives. This, you know, this is just one of the, you know, look, it might keep on going lower, but you know, overall, you know, unless you think this coin is dying, it's probably going to get, you know, significantly higher than this against Bitcoin later on. And you know, to me, what's important is, you know, I wanna make more Bitcoin, right? Like, you know, everybody's kind of like make more dollars, whatever, but you know, we understand that, you know, making dollars is a kind of it's an unproductive uphill battle you're going to lose over time. But Bitcoin kind of the opposite. You know, I know so many people, traders I've even, you know, kind of worked with directly who, it's so impressive. They would make, for example, a killer gain from their own trades, you know, maybe a 2x or a 3x gain from their own kind of trade that they make on Bybit or whatever. But then they will park all of that money in Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin will double again or triple again, right? And you know, we got to keep in mind, if your coin, if you triple your money and you park it in Bitcoin and Bitcoin triples, that is effectively a 10x gain. Okay, like, you know, we need to sit down for a minute and really understand how easy it can be. My God, I look so crazy. I don't look at myself very much, like in a mirror. So this is kind of like, and obviously I sit in front of the camera every day, right? So anyway, we'll just put this hood back up, and that kind of protects me. But yeah, we need to deep for a second and smash up the likes. By the way, if you're enjoying this live stream, we just passed 100. You absolute legends. We need to appreciate for a second how easy it can be to get that 10x. Right? We always want a 10x, 100x, 1000x, whatever you want. These are big numbers. They're not easy to achieve, but if you yourself are doing well and then you park that money in a place that's going to take it higher for you, then that's a lot of kind of compounding and leverage that you're applying there. And it definitely, I think makes a big difference in where you end up going, and I think a big part of it is you don't even have to work for the other gain, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of happens. So, really, quite interesting and useful stuff. And thank you very much. Incredibly kind of you, brother. Of course. So that's Ethereum. I think Ethereum's looking pretty good from that perspective. If we look at it on the dollar chart, obviously, it's just kind of a sad chart, but it's not even that bad, really. I mean, it just fell down to this zone, which kind of could be expected as support. It's a pretty nice higher low so far. You know what I mean? Like, it's not super, like, it's just not as bad as people are, like, you just bought the top, you know what I mean? Like, you just had a shitty entry, but that doesn't really mean that the coin itself is in a horrible place. I mean, from its high of this market cycle, it dropped down by 65%. It's now sitting at about minus 60. So it is really, really bad. Of course, it's true. It is really, really bad. But, it hasn't really even punctured too much of this, ascending triangle that Ethereum had formed years back. This was 2022 into 2023. It really didn't puncture this zone very much. So I don't think it got to a particularly horrible place. And again, I just think that the kind of negative sentiment is overblown right now for Ethereum. I don't really think that, it's super realistic or even in proportion to what's actually happened. And the markets will eventually typically kind of correct those things if what I'm saying is true. It might not be true, but if it is, then the market will typically kind of come around and correct those things. So from that kind of altcoin perspective, I think that do not give me a copyright strike. From that kind of from that kind of perspective, I think that we are looking at a pretty decent chart here. I mean, I'm just trying to be real with you guys. If the chart is dropping by a lot, and we understand that it's probably not dying, then it might be a pretty interesting coin. I don't know. I've only been doing it for 8 years. What do I know? But here we are back with Bitcoin. Let's just break down what this chart is showing us a little bit here. If there's anything new or interesting to talk about. Oh, yes. I didn't focus too much on what happens on the downside. If Bitcoin does lose this level, then I don't think that these interim levels will help. I've already said that. So we're probably returning back down to this one. But again, at that point, that probably puts us back down into the 60s. At this stage, because of Bitcoin's performance, if we end up dropping, it could be, quite steep. I don't think that we'd be looking at, just a couple inches lower than last time kind of thing like we did before. I think we're probably looking at kind of getting deeper into this zone. And again, that's a really good level to be buying as well. I think people are going to be really interested in that. But right here, we've got Bitcoin breaking out. This is sitting at about 91.5 right now. Very quickly, I want to see if this is correlating with the S&P. And no, it is not. The S&P just doesn't care. Bitcoin is kind of stealing the show right now, about to sweep that high that it set, which would be a brand new high for the day, for the week, for the month, for the quarter. Let's see if Bitcoin can manage it. It is a little bit camera shy right now. It's dropping down by a little bit right here, but it's pretty much very nearly there. So that's definitely interesting. Sui or Sol to replace Ethereum? I mean, we got to talk numbers, right? Like, Ethereum right now is worth about $200 billion, which is still a lot. Solana is worth about 74. So, if Solana, and by the way, Solana inflates. People don't really know this, but there's no max supply for Solana. You can just keep on inflating it, and it does keep on inflating. So in terms of, kind of like adjusted for inflation, all-time highs, Solana would have to get quite high. And it still would be like, less than, Ethereum's current market cap. So, I don't really think that, Solana is super well positioned to flip Ethereum. Like, it could happen. These are fun discussions to be had, but I don't really know. More likely it could be something else, right? It's a brand new market cycle. We haven't actually seen any kind of new coins entering the top. I don't know what Leo is, but other than that, we haven't really seen a lot. So maybe something else kind of enters the game. Maybe not. Maybe this is the stage where, coins that we know and love kind of mature. So, that's Solana. And then Sui is just, way lower. I don't even know where it is, but, it's way smaller than both of them. Is it even, like, we're in the top 25? I haven't seen it yet. Where is it? It must be, like, a lot smaller. I don't really know. Let's see if I can just search it up real quick. What it's looking like in terms of market cap. And I'm ready for your questions here as well, ladies and gents. So if you haven't, I've just missed it. Okay, never mind then. It's number 15 right here. So if you do have any questions that you want me to cover in this live stream, then definitely drop them in the live chat now, and I'll take a look at them. But yeah, look at that. Most of its supply hasn't even, which is pretty dangerous. Most of its supply is still not even released, but it's a market cap of 7.8 billion. You really, this needs to literally move up by a factor of 30x in order to, kind of get to Ethereum's current market cap. So, it's really, really far away. Even for Solana, it's it would require a lot. I'm not worried about Ethereum losing its second place position. People have these fantasies, and it's happened before. I remember XRP did get above Ethereum in the past, but me, I'm not really kind of into that kind of sensationalized stuff. That's not really, it doesn't have much appeal to me. Even if another coin flips, like, who cares? Like, it would have been riskier to be in, so I'm not really interested. I'm seeing literally a potential kind of like 2x on my Bitcoin. If I'm holding Ethereum. And at that point, why would I care if something else moved, quite well? I mean, like, a 2x on Bitcoin is just insane. It's absolutely insane. So here we are. We did sweep that high just while I was clicked off it. And we did get up to 91,750 right here on Coinbase, which is very, very cool. A little bit of a pullback right now, but let's see if this intensifies where it gets to. Obviously, there's going to be a very, 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 very light range of support right here at about kind of 91.3, and maybe we see, I don't know, some continued moves up after that. So we'll see how that goes. But so I think that the pump will continue. I mean, yeah, it's looking pretty good so far, right? It's definitely looking good. It's obviously dependent on the S&P 500 to me. If the S&P 500 is moving up, then, that's going to really kind of clear the skies for Bitcoin. But if the S&P is struggling, then I think that will, even though it's been looking good for Bitcoin so far, I think that will weigh Bitcoin down. I think Bitcoin, regardless of what you want to say and what you feel and what you think, I think Bitcoin is tied to, the S&P 500 to some extent. And that means, I don't think that it can run forever if it's just kind of leaving the S&P behind. So that's kind of my perspective there on if this pump will continue. You got to go and ask big man Trump. He'll probably know. But here's gold. Gold hit 3,400. It nearly hit my first main target of 3,500, did it? Oh, it did. Oh my God. It hit 3,500 flat today. Look at that on the OHLC right here on the top. 3,500.12 cents. So, wow, there we go. Shout out to those of you that have been watching this channel for a while. You'll know that we were very bullish on gold for a little bit. That's really, really cool. My main target for gold is 3,600. We don't look like we're slowing down, so I guess I could raise that, but I like 3,600 right now. Obviously, after that, 4K is in play, but I mean, this is quite a spectacular rally at this point. I mean, bless you guys have been holding gold for a long time. You've had to wait a long time for this, but from where this thing really started to heat up to now, it has been over a year, but it's up by 75%, which beats inflation. It beats everything. It's done really, really well. Maybe, does it even beat Bitcoin? It probably doesn't. No, of course not, but still pretty good. Let's just see. I don't want to be so obvious. I don't want to be so confident about that. It's looking close. 400. 400's about here. Oh, wow. Yeah, no, Bitcoin did better. But not by much. Not by much. Considering how risky Bitcoin is and considering how safe gold is, I think gold did really well. So that's definitely, yeah, really, really cool indeed to see for gold, for precious metals, commodities there. Let's take a quick look at Tesla. Yeah, just kind of chilling. Yeah, I don't think it's in a great place. I think if it kind of hangs around here for too much longer, by extension, I mean the S&P, of course, then things could get kind of bad. But as it stands right now, it's not looking too horrible, and Bitcoin is just looking so strong. So that's definitely, I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. A strong Bitcoin definitely, is something that I would welcome. To kind of continue to see how this plays out. Let's go ahead and put my normal chart on this. And yeah, we're kind of breaking out of this resistance block right now. So, and it's not super accurate the way I've drawn it. It probably should have been stretched up a little bit higher. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, if Bitcoin can kind of really get some believable kind of price moves up, then, it's probably going to close this gap up to about 95, 96 pretty quickly. Do I believe in a real alt season in the near future? No, not really. And the reason that I don't think we're going to see an alt season, a real one, in the near future, is because alt seasons are, just a function of optimism in the space, and you're not going to have optimism until the price has moved up by a lot and people are making money. And right now, surprisingly, even though Bitcoin's literally sat at $91,000, a lot of people are really upset with it. A lot of people are really, not, feeling good about their Bitcoin position. So for me, a real altcoin season, would probably require Bitcoin to, number one, get above its previous all-time high, but number two, probably more like 120, 130K, if we even get there, because we don't know if we will. I think only there, is the sentiment really going to start opening up to the point where these alts really rally. That can still be, many months away. That can still be 2 months away, 6 months away, 1 year away, but I don't think that should be discouraging, because that's just kind of the time scale of these big moves in the market, and it's not a bad thing. If you can see it, then you can still make money off it. So I think that's actually what's really, really important in these markets. But with that, ladies and gents, probably going to be rounding up over here. I really hope you have enjoyed the stream. We've been going on for just over an hour so far. It's been a really, really good one. If you have enjoyed this one, do me a favor and smash up those likes. If you got any final questions, then I will be taking a look at them now. But otherwise, I am pretty much done. Once again, if you want to trade on the best places in the game, then the links are down below. You get a ton of free cash after you start trading using each of these links in the description. And OKX is a really, really interesting one, just because of, they've been around pretty much since the beginning, or at least compared to all the other big ones. But, never been hacked as far as I know. Very, very good reputation. I believe they've just opened up in America as well. So American viewers, you can... when you follow that link, you can choose your region. Obviously, it's going to be restricted, but it's cool that it even exists. And then, for the rest of the world where you are allowed to use these platforms, it's very powerful. So definitely check it out if you are interested. We'll talk about them a little bit more in future videos as well. But I hope you've enjoyed this one. You know what to do. Smash up those likes, subscribe, tick the bell, do all that good stuff. Only check out the links in the description if you are allowed to in your country with your local laws and regulations. And we'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.